Hi, teammates. My name is Sean J. McCall, and as usual, I'm your host for the Eurostep here on Instagram, where we try to get a look behind the scenes of basketball related topics and great guests. And and I hope people learn something from these episodes. Tonight is no different, but before I begin, please make sure you look at the bottom of the screen at the comment section. If you would like to ask a question that I can ask during the live broadcast, please write it in there. Everybody will see it pop up. If you only want me to see it, just type it there in the little speech bubble with the question mark in it, and only I'll see it. And I will try my best to infuse your questions throughout the broadcast, but it could be that you ask a question that I already have on my list anyway. So, with that being said, let's get to it. Chances are if you've played in Germany or you are a German basketball fan, you've probably run into my next guest. He is an absolute legend here in Germany in the basketball circle. I can't imagine how many interviews he's done. I'll ask him that later. Miles Schmidt-Scheuber is the voice of German basketball. Many would say he's done play-by-play for the Frankfurt Skyliners for a long time. He also writes for various German magazines and kind of it's called. He's also on Eurobasket. He's one of the writers for Eurobasket, the Bible of European basketball, and German hoops as well. And I'm also one of the people he's interviewed over the years. Actually, I think he's interviewed me twice. He interviewed me once for after a Frankfurt game, and also for Eurobasket a long time ago. So we know each other quite well. Life hasn't always been great to him. We'll talk about that as well. But he's had his issues to deal with. But the man, the myth, the legend. Let's get him on. Let me find him. Just a second. There he is. Or there he was. Right there. And why is it not letting me add him? I don't want to do that. Okay, now this is a problem. Just a second, everyone. I'm having trouble adding Miles in. Miles, can you click on the bottom of the screen at the plus with the little camera? Click on that and ask to join the broadcast. I'm having trouble doing it from my end. Or maybe if I click here, maybe this will work. Miles. This will work. Never mind, Miles. I got it. Invite. So he should be in just a second. That was weird. That's the first time that happened. Just accept it, Miles, when you get the invitation.
All right, here I
There we
am.
go. My man, Miles. What's
What's
going
up?
on, man?
What's up, Sean?
What's good,
You
buddy?
had, you had to clear me up about how I can be seen by everyone. I didn't click on the plus sign.
No, now you're not. No, now you're in. Everybody can see
I
you.
know. I got it. Thanks.
Okay. So, man, long time no see.
Yeah, I think it's been like 12 years. I think the last time I remember seeing you in Braunschweig, that
Yeah,
was a long time ago. Long time
yeah.
ago.
It's been quite a long time. That means we're getting older, man.
Yeah, I mean I've been around 20 years now in
Yeah,
Germany, so
yeah,
it you have to get older, you know?
yeah. So basically, we're just going to do it like this. I got some questions to ask you, but feel free to share what you want to share. What you don't want to share, don't share. It should be more like a easy conversation between two old friends.
Yeah, Sean, before we start, can I just just start with, you know me, I love taking pictures and
Go
I
ahead.
I checked all the interviews you did. Please forgive me. I'm going to check out your interviews more. I just don't have time because I'm always working. If I have
Don't
time,
worry.
do something about basketball. And but I've interviewed like half the people you've interviewed. Derek Allen, Bryce Taylor, Javante Hawk, Aline Smith, Hilliard, but I have a Darun Hilliard story for you later when we get to my cancer. But I've just
Okay.
got to show you this picture because this guy right here, you've also interviewed.
Put it up just a little bit. Who was that?
Maurice Endor.
I saw Maurice. Yeah, good old
See
Mo.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, good old Mo.
5 years ago, that was before a Celtics game in Boston.
He's a great guy, a really great guy.
And then I think 2 years ago, I was able to interview him also. So, yeah. So there you see. I mean, our paths are come together in many ways. You know.
Well, I'm not as good as this as you are. I'm very much the beginner, but you know, I do what I can.
Hey, I mean, you're a very very cool guy, and I'm gonna really check out your interviews, and I know you're doing a good job. I feel it.
Thank you. Well, then you have experience after our interview.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Okay, so um, let's get right to it then, man. So basically, Miles, you're born German, but your parents are German, but you were born in Boston, right?
Exactly, exactly. My parents,
And how when how
but
were you raised bilingual? Like,
yeah,
did your parents, your German parents, talk to you in German at home, and then outside you were talking English all the whole time anyway? Was it like that for you?
basically my mother brought me up with the German language, and I got into school. I only had 1 year of kindergarten here in Germany. The kids already go with 1 or 2 years, but I
Right.
went in first grade. I knew no English. I mean,
Really?
I knew no English, and I had to repeat first grade. But after that, everything went smoothly. I had no problems. I learned English, but it was difficult at first because not knowing a language. I mean, but I'm glad because I was bilingual.
It's really, I mean, for kids, it's easy to learn. It's not so difficult than for older people. But um, did you visit Germany often when you were young? Did you guys come back here often?
Well, of course, of course. All the relatives, my relatives were all in Germany, and I was always here every summer. I was in Germany, so I got a real good feel of the German culture from a very young age, and so that's why it wasn't a problem for me to come over here and live here. I came over in 2001, so
Mhm.
I've been here now more than 20 years.
And where did your love for basketball begin specifically?
I have to be well. I mean, I'm from Boston,
Yeah,
80s kid. I mean, the 80s were great. Larry Bird.
right.
I mean, I know you could probably go on and on, but for me, the GOAT is Larry Bird. I know everyone talks about Jordan and LeBron, but for me, it's Larry Bird. And I mean, obviously, I'm biased because
That's
he's
where you grew up,
played for the Celtics.
right?
But actually, I have to tell you the truth. I'm a hockey kid. I mean, Boston up north, cold winters. I mean, I
Yeah,
played hockey as a kid. You couldn't play basketball and hockey at the same time, but I chose hockey. I just liked it more. But a lot of my friends play basketball. So whenever I had a time during recess, I was playing basketball. But I never did play organized basketball because I was a hockey kid. But I followed it, and I played it with my friends. So I loved basketball from a very young age. I always did, and also it was helped through the success of the Celtics in the '80s.
what's your like earliest Celtics memory?
My earliest Celtics memory, of course. There's a chapter in my book. It's called "Celts Around the Corner." I mean, I lived in the suburbs of Boston, but Celtics were living all over the place.
Right.
And lucky, my neighbor for most of my childhood was two-time NBA champion, Hall of Famer, the big man with the red hair, David Cowens. And I mean, he was just such a nice guy. And I was a little kid, I looked up to him in awe. I mean, he was a Celtic, and he lived down the street. And so whenever he passed by our house in his car, he would honk, he would wave. Halloween would go over, and he'd have candy for the kids. And the greatest memory of all is really back in 1980. I was one of my first people that I really liked, sportscaster, was Bryant Gumbel. Many don't know
Brian Gumby, big
Bryant Gumbel
time.
was actually on the Today Show, but before he was on the Today Show,
Yeah,
he was a big time uh,
sports guy.
sports commentator. He did the football games, the scores always on the Sundays, and David Cowens was retiring or something in 1980, and I just heard that I was getting ready for school, and I saw the TV, and it was like a live interview at Dave Cowens' house with Bryant Gumbel, and I was like, "What, Bryant Gumbel?" So I went over, rung the doorbell, and Dave Cowens opened, and he had no problems. I went in, and I got to meet Brian Gumbel, and he wrote me the coolest personalized autograph that I still have today. So
That's dope.
he's one of my role models, one of the first people I liked in sportscasting.
Speaking of sportscasting, and of course, to be a sportscaster, you have to have the gift of gab. You need to be able to speak. Were you always a motor mouth, or like did your mom and dad tell you to stop talking all the time, or did it kind of come with age?
Well, I don't really think I'm a motor mouth. I mean, I'm pretty. I've always been a little reserved, but when it comes to basketball, that's my element, you know. And
Right.
I'm calling games. It's just what I do, you know. And I'm very emotional, and I just love calling games. And I think just being able to be able to interview basketball players and not have a problem reaching out to them. I think at a very young age, I collected autographs of athletes. So I learned at a very young age how to approach athletes and how to do it the right way. And a lot of the people I interview, it's coming from me. I do it all myself. I approach the players, and if I don't have like a contact somehow, then I approach them myself somehow. I've done it all, Sean. I mean, there's one chapter in my book, 30 Seconds with Luka Doncic. I mean, I called him up in his hotel room when he was 17 in Bamberg.
Yeah.
I spoke to him, but he couldn't do an interview with me. It was Real Madrid policy, but I just go for it, and that's I love doing this, I mean, I love the contact with professional players, and just learning about their journeys is fascinating, which you're doing right now too. I mean, you interview women players, you interview all kinds of people, agents I saw, players. So, I mean, I think you're liking your job too.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I like to say that I'm learning by doing. And if I look back to some of my first interviews compared to now, I'm not great now, but compared to when I first started, it's a world of difference. And I think that's what also kind of keeps you going, because you see your own improvement. And of course I like talking to people. I'm a motor mouth,
Yeah.
so so it's kind of natural for me to kind of talk to people. But what I wanted to ask you is, go back to the Dave Cowan story.
Yeah.
You said he would drive by the neighborhood.
Yeah.
What kind of car did he have?
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay. All right. One thing I have to tell you is the guy was, I mean, he's from Kentucky, all right? And he's like a farmer's boy, I guess, but he was so humble. I mean, he did not flaunt anything. I mean, if you went by his house, I mean, it's still there. I mean, he doesn't live there anymore, but the new people that moved in, they didn't change anything. You would never think that a professional basketball player lived there. Even if you saw Larry Bird's house in Brookline, Massachusetts, it was like the smallest house. I know obviously he built in French Lick, but
Right.
in Boston, I mean, he lived so frugally. It was, and so basically, Dave Cowens, I'm serious, he drove the ugliest yellow SUV, like back in the 70s, if you want to call that, like one of the first versions. Then he had a pretty cool motorcycle, and those are the only two forms of the only two motorcycles that I remember from him. But he had some other cars too. But he didn't have a Ferrari, or he didn't. I don't even think he had his wife may have had a Mercedes. I'm not sure. But the guy, you would have never thought. I mean, the guy, the NBA stars of today would never live like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
really laid back the way he lived.
Cool. So let's fast forward a little bit to college life.
Yeah.
You studied media arts in college, right?
Right. I was at Emerson in Boston. They gave the world Jay Leno.
Oh,
Jay Leno won.
what looking back then, what was your dream job while you're studying, going through your major, everything? What would you have said back then? What would be your dream job back
I
then?
wanted I wanted to be a sportscaster. I mean,
Mhm.
not what I'm doing in Germany, not like, calling games, but I wanted to be like, a local sportscaster, like in Boston or some city, and just stand there, read off the teleprompter, and just talk about what happened that day in that city's in the sports teams for that city. Or obviously, even, report, like do live reports from games or whatever.
Right.
But to tell you the truth, the play-by-play wasn't so much in my thoughts in college that I could maybe do that, even though I'd always watched Celtics and Bruins, and Red Sox, Patriots, all that stuff. And obviously I got a feel of what those guys were doing, the play-by-play guys. But that wasn't actually my first instinct, what I could maybe do later. I wanted to be a sportscaster. But that didn't work out. And all the people that like my work can thank a certain girl that made me go to Germany back in 2001 because, we were in love, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of put my sportscasting on hold, and
Right.
it wasn't easy getting, trying to, set foot there. Sooner or later, I got into basketball, and then I started doing what I've always done. So, that's kind of what brought me. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have come to Germany, and I probably maybe I would have been a sportscaster. I don't know, in the States, but I came to Germany in 2001, and the rest is history. That's
What
basically how it is.
when you moved back, or not back, but when you moved to Germany, because of the love,
Yeah.
what was your biggest challenge or biggest adjustment? Because you had been raised in the States, and you had kind of that mentality, but you are actually German. So moving here for the first time to actually live, although you visited often, what was the biggest adjustment you faced?
It wasn't that bad, really, to tell you the truth, because I had always been here. I have that German. I'd always had that German culture, so I really didn't have that big of a problem. The only thing I didn't always like about, or that I had to get used to, is just the mentality of the Germans. Obviously, they're very
Yeah,
disciplined, which is a good
right.
thing, but sometimes they can be so cold. And when you're coming from the States, the people were. Sometimes it's just a lot easier, to get accustomed to a new place. People are more inviting, and that's basic. But I really didn't have any serious adjustment period. Um, the language was always a problem, just because I had only learned German really through my parents, through talking at home. The grammar and stuff, that was always a
Right.
problem. I never had schooling,
Yeah.
but somehow I was able to. I mean, I always spoke German, so it was, I could obviously call games in German, and my Eurobasket stuff I do in English. So
Right.
I didn't really have too many problems with getting accustomed to having to live in Germany.
If you were to do it all over again, would there be anything that you would change as far as the move from the States to Germany? Thinking back on it, because what I'm getting at is there's a lot of athletes that move over to Germany, So um, anything that now looking back on it, what maybe you would have done differently. It's a little bit different for you because you were German. You're German anyway, but still.
I mean, I basically came to Germany with nothing. I mean, I just had this girl that I was in love with. I didn't have anything else, and I was just like, I mean, I'm gonna wing it. I'm gonna come over here, and I'll try to find something or do something. And so maybe if I would have come over with a plan, I had really had no plan. I had absolutely no plan. Maybe it would have been a little easier in certain ways if I had had a plan. But in the end, I just, after 2 years, I worked for a company that was back in the early 2000s. The websites were coming into fashion, so I was
Right.
working for a company that was making those. And then I came to Frankfurt, and I worked at AFN. And then after that,
Forces Network, yeah.
exactly, that's what pretty much got my foot into the whole media thing in Germany. And then after that, in 2004, is when that season, the 04-05 season, is when I called my first games. And 2 years later, we would meet in
Mhm.
Frankfurt in 2006, when you were
Yeah.
playing with Science City Jena. So
How did exactly that come about to get your foot in the door with the Frankfurt Skyliners doing play by play? How did that come to play?
well, I was at AFN. Exactly. I was at AFN, and I was doing reports about the Opel Skyliners, as they were
At the
called.
time, right?
And the press guy, Mark Ribitsky, he was the first guy that I had contact with from the Skyliners. And then, because he knew I was at AFN, and I was always reporting about the Skyliners. And then one day, I guess they just wanted to have their games uh, done on radio, the whole, play by play, whatever they
Right.
want, games over the radio, and so he pretty much came up with me as maybe being a good candidate.
Mhm.
And there was a radio station that one was going to do it, and he just said, this guy could do it, and the rest is history. That was how I got my foot in the door. That was the 04-05 season is when I started calling games.
Do you have any idea? Somehow I think you know the answer to this question, but do you have any idea how many players you've interviewed since you've been in Germany?
Well, I don't have the exact count, but I've obviously been keeping track my whole career because I like numbers and stats, and I play guy. I love talking about stats, but I'm actually coming up I'm very close to 1,700. Now
Wow.
there are guys I've interviewed like 30 or 40 times. You know,
Right.
guys that
Right.
are so nice and will just answer my questions
Right.
again and again because I keep sending them questions and they're just nice guys. Other people, just aren't like that. But just when I'm talking about players, one interview, it's almost 1,700. Almost, I'm at about 1,700 now.
So 1,700 interviews that you've done with players or people around basketball.
Yeah,
How many times have you been interviewed?
me,
Yeah.
I I've, I've maybe 4 or 5 times. I mean, podcasts with my guy Joe Asbury. He's the guy maybe you should also.
Right. I know. I know Joe.
Joe is a great guy
Yeah.
and a real character. He had me on his, and then another podcast. Actually, I did a podcast with a friend of mine from the States who had Greg Kite on. Greg Kite was
Yeah.
on the
I remember
Celtics
him.
'84 team. He was the backup center, and other than that, not too many times really. So it's
That's
nice
a
change to be interviewed.
that's a huge imbalance. 1,700 and versus five. That's a injustice. That's an injustice, man. Um, so all the years that you worked with Frankfurt, do you have
Yeah.
one coach that you say that's your guy? Like that's your favorite Frankfurt coach?
Well, I mean, there weren't so many. There was
Actually, yeah.
Gordon Herbert, who's the
Gordon?
coach now. He was the first. Then came Murat Didin.
Yeah,
Then was Muli Katsarin for a short time. Then Gordy came back. Then I believe Sebastian Gleim.
yeah.
Last season we had Diego Ocampo, the Spanish guy, and then
Spanish guy, yeah.
very short time an Italian coach. The name has slipped my mind already. I think Luca Del Monte, and now we have a Dutch guy, Gert Hamenik. But I mean, I can't lie. I mean, Murat Didin is my guy. I mean, Murat Didin.
Hey, he's a character.
Yeah, I mean, he was
He's a
just
character.
such a nice guy. Some other players may not always talk so nice about him. I mean, but I only had good encounters with him. A real cool guy, and yeah, I mean, he had his success with the Skyliners, and he was always a guy I could talk to, and he was always in good spirits, and he never shied away from an interview with me. He always did it, always.
Cool.
And
Yeah, he's a character though.
we didn't call him Murat Didin. We called him Baba. That was his name. No one really knew why, but that was just.
If anybody is Turkish out there, maybe it's something in Turkish. So if anybody's Turkish out there watching,
I
let me
think
know what
like
Baba means.
father or something, or I don't know. Not sure.
Okay. Um, all the players that you've interviewed or coaches, period. Um, is there anybody that stands out that you look back on and think, oh my God, that was the worst interview ever?
Yeah, I mean, I've done so many,
You don't
Sean.
have to we're not asking, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. You don't have to give a name, but
Yeah.
an interview where you were like, oh, that was not good.
To be honest, I've 95% have always been good. There's always a few where you can notice that they didn't really want to do it, maybe, or the answers were very short, that they
Or
didn't have the time of day. They didn't want to give me the time of day. But I have to say, most of my interviews have always been very, very positive. And I've never really had one where, where I could say where I would really have sleepless nights. I mean, not really.
I
They've all,
can I can say the same. Like when I was writing that question, I was thinking of like, okay, who's maybe my worst interview? And I've been really fortunate with the people that I've had on that they've all given me really good information, and I haven't had anybody that I thought, wow, that interview sucked. You know, I had one guest that was very long-winded,
mm,
and but that was like in my beginnings, and I didn't really know how to kind of cut him off a little bit.
right.
But even the interview itself was actually great.
Mhm.
I was upset with myself because I didn't feel like I had control over the interview. But the actual content, what the guest provided was incredible. So I guess you kind of live and you learn. You kind of, like I said, I'm learning by doing. So
That's how, I mean, I can remember my interviews, I feel always got better through time. I mean, the first years, I always, a lot of times, like a lot of flack from people. Hey, man, your interviews are too long, And I mean, there is some truth to that, or my articles are too long. So I try, unless I'm like really portraying like some stud, that's played like 20 years. I mean, that article obviously is going to be long because he's
right.
accomplished so much. But like guys that haven't played so long, those articles I try to trim them down because I guess sometimes my work is a little too long. But that's how I am.
You know what though? Really, especially for the ones that are younger or maybe don't have the greatest resume or things like that, they they need that exposure. So if your articles or your interviews are maybe a little bit longer, hey, who cares? I mean, you know, sometimes people need that and they need to read a little bit more or see a little bit more, listen to a little bit more. And of course, just like anything, just like this live today, if somebody's not feeling it, they'll turn it off.
Hey, it's their decision.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Frankfurt team?
Yeah, the f- I've been very fortunate to been they've only won three titles. They won the 2000 Cup, they won the 2004 BBL title, and they won the 2016 FIBA Europe Cup. And the 2004 win, I was there, but that was actually my first dealings. That I had just, started reporting about the Skyliners, but I hadn't really been in the door yet. So didn't really know the players. I mean, Tyrone Ellis, the late Chris Williams, rest in peace. Those two players are the first two Americans I had dealings with in Germany. And but it's got to be the 2015-16 team, the team that won
Right,
the Europe Cup.
right, right.
That was a very, very special team. Gordon Herbert was the coach, and basically it had been 2, 3 years of really hard work and just
It
constant
was a
development.
drought. Yeah.
Guys like Johannes Vogtmann and Danilo Bartol would become EuroLeague players. Quantes Robertson was on that team, and Jordan Theodore was the point guard, and they just had great parts. John Little, Aaron Dorenkamp. That was a very special team. That chemistry was incredible, and everything came together that season. And that run in the FIBA Europe Cup was really special. And I was very fortunate to have been able to call those games in English on the YouTube channel, the FIBA Europe Cup season for the Skylanders. That was a lot of fun because I hardly ever call games in English because it's always.
Right.
But twice I was able to do that season and the season before when they played Euro Challenge. That was a lot of fun being able to call games in English.
Speaking of calling games in English versus in German, what's the difficulty level when you call a game in German? I mean, the words are different, you know. Do you I don't know if I've ever really listened to you on radio. I for sure haven't. Do you say like Korbleger instead of layup? Like how do
I
you like
I
kind of make it
I
click in your mind?
a lot of English into my German broadcast. I mean, people that have heard me know that. I mean, it's just I try to use as much English, and even sometimes I say English phrases when I mean, I have to be truthful. I don't always come up right away with the German phrase that I want to say just because I'm not, you know, I am a native speaker. I mean, but I'm not. I wasn't born here. I don't. I will always feel an American. You know, I have two passports, but you know, I was born in the States, and I will always be an American. You know, I mean, and it's just English was my. I mean, German was my first language, but then, like I said, I learned English in school and everything. I never really learned German 100.
Right.
You know, but my German is good enough. But I'm just saying, there are times I just can't find that German word, so I'll just say it in English. You know, screw it. You know.
Well, then in that case, you're educating the listeners as well.
Yeah.
But you know, of course, the pretty much universal language for basketball is English.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's not like in the 50s where you would say Korbleger. Everybody understands if you say layup these days, you know?
I mean, to be honest, Sean, I probably said Korbleger maybe a few times my whole year career. I mean, I say layup.
Yeah.
Das war ein
Yeah.
schöner Layup, oder I don't know, you know, Korbleger. I don't say that.
So now we know how many times you've said Korbleger on live on air. But what makes a good interview for you? I'm really curious about this as far as like for what I'm doing as well. What makes a good interview for you?
Well, I mean, you know, I just do my research. You know, if I'm going to interview you, I do my research. I'm not, I mean, Wikipedia isn't enough. I will check articles that you did in school back in the day if I can find them. I mean, I will look.
Right.
I will. That's what I do. I mean, if I will read articles. I interview a lot of times. I will interview those guys coming out of college, or maybe you know one second year guy. Then obviously there's not too much to ask, so I want to find out more questions about what they did in school. So then I will, you know, I will do my research and I will read articles from college, and then that's how I base my questions. You know, it's nothing. I try to really go in more in depth and you know make the interview different than what you normally might read in a newspaper. I don't want to diss any of my colleagues, but you know what I'm talking about. There are interviews out there, you know, it's just, you know,
Pretty cut and dry.
wasn't too much research. You know, I want to, you know, I actually, the biggest, the biggest plus I get by preparing these interviews is just learning something. I prepare the questions and I'm learning something about what they did. Then when they answer, I'm learning more. You know, I want to learn about the player. You know, I want to learn things about his career, and it also helps my broadcasts. That's another reason why I do all these
Mhm.
interviews because then I like to you know say information in my broadcast that maybe
Right.
have never been heard before.
Right.
That's that's what I think what separates me from all the other people out there. I hope at least.
What's what's a what's a way that you know that you asked the right question? You know what I mean? For me, it's of course if someone asks, "Hey, that's a good question," but um, for me, it's a sign when they really have to think when they're like, "Oh man," you know. Then I know that was a good question for them. What is it for you?
That happens on occasion, but for me, the biggest plus is just after the interview, just getting one sentence back from them, like, "Hey, man, incredible questions. You did your research." I get that a lot
Right.
from players.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what makes it worthwhile for me. That tells me that I did my job.
Yeah.
So,
And not a lot of people think about or realize how much you just talked about how much research or how much you have to invest, how much time you have to invest in one single interview that maybe lasts. I mean, we'll be on for probably almost an hour, but if you've got someone on the radio after a game, you still have to know something about these people. And what do you think is the hardest part about researching? That's part one of my question. The second part is it easier today in the information age with internet and things that you can pick up online to do research?
of course, Sean, of course. I'm always thinking how people like how these writers back in the 80s, how they, I mean, how long did it take them to write these articles about where did they find the information? I mean, back in the day, I don't even think the press secretaries, what were they doing back in the day? I mean, I guess they were talking a lot with the journalists and telling them information about the players because nowadays, Sean, it's so easy. I mean, I find all my information on the
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah.
And what was the first part? What's the hardest thing about
The most difficult thing about researching?
I just I get the thing I hate most is when I can't open an article because of that of the problem of I don't know how
That you're
to
not a subscriber to the newspaper
no
or something
not
like that?
that too but it has to do with it, I get this message you're not allowed to open this in your country or something
Ah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah. I know
know,
what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
that's what I hate most all this
Article is not available in your country. Yeah.
exactly that's when I get really mad because then I but usually I'll find another article and that'll be good enough.
Right. Is there a difference in your preparation for, of course, an interview like this, or when you pull somebody after a game and do the pregame or after game stuff? Of course, there has to be a difference, but how is it for you to prepare the difference?
Well, the post game, obviously, you know, it's got to be quick. Got a
Right.
few questions. I mean, they're not that difficult. You just basically ask, you know, how did they see the game, or you know, what was going through their mind on the buzzer beater or in crunch time. What was key for getting that stop? I mean, it's not too hard. I mean, you just have to really be sharp and make the quick questions.
Adjustments, right.
I have never been a real big fan of post game interviews, just because for me it was always difficult just because my game is the play by play. And last May I did I called the NBBL JBBL Final Four in Frankfurt, and I actually had to do all the interviews. I think at the end it was like 29 interviews for the weekend of 8 teams, always post game, and that was difficult, but I actually enjoyed it in the end because
Mhm.
I mean, I got used to it after a while. I'd never done that before, just because it's difficult. First, that it's always really difficult to prepare for a weekend where you have to know 8 teams, you know. But
Yeah, yeah.
somehow I get through it. So, um, yeah, the post game interviews, they're short usually, so I can get through it if I have to,
Mm.
because it's only 2 or 3 questions.
You pretty much have to think on your feet just real quick. And
Yes, yes, big time. Yeah.
is there a difference when you do print media as opposed to other media, like your as far as your preparation goes?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. What'd you say?
Or is there a difference between print media, like when you're
Oh,
writing an article about someone, or you have them face to face or something like that?
what's more difficult? What do you mean? Just a face-to-face interview, or?
For as far as the preparation goes,
I mean, the articles usually I usually interview the person and then I just use their.
and then you write it, right?
That's
Right.
pretty easy. But like I just like the other day, like last week, I wrote an article about this huge talent, German guy Ivan Karchenkov, and basically, um, mainly because FC Bayern Munich are very strict about people talking to their players, but this guy is a youth player. I decided, you know, without having to get any stupid comments from the organization, I wasn't going to talk to him, but I spoke to all these people in youth basketball. Like they played in Frankfurt a week ago, and I spoke to the coach of Frankfurt Pro B team, to the NBBL coach. Then I spoke to some youth players, and I basically got all their quotes and made a nice article
Mm.
portray about this young player. And so I don't always have to get the quotes from players. Sometimes just different and a nice challenge when you can write an article based on other people's opinions about that player.
So we already touched on this before. You said how sometimes you get criticism for sometimes the length of your article or the passion that you have when you're doing your play-by-play. How do you deal with critic from various sources? How do you deal with that as a journalist?
I I mean, I haven't really had that. I mean, I just, you know, I listen, but I mean, I, I just do my thing, you know. I don't let it phase me. I mean, I like what I do, and I think it's pretty good what I do, so I just keep doing it. And if someone doesn't like what I do, then that's their opinion. I mean, that's okay. I mean, I don't like. There's certain enough people I don't like in the media, or people I'm not going to read, you know. But I haven't really had that much bad criticism. I mean, like I said, I've often heard that my articles are too long, but that's not really mean criticism. That's just maybe
Right,
I could improve on. And
right.
I have gotten better with the length of my articles. So,
Okay. And like I alluded to before, and you stated before, it hasn't always been rosy. So 2020 comes around and you get hit with a diagnosis of cancer.
Yeah.
First of all, I mean, my hat off to you for bouncing back from that. Second of all, the diagnosis.
Yeah.
What does that do to you immediately after you hear, sir, I'm sorry I have to tell you this, but we found cancer.
To tell you the truth, Sean, it was tough, but it could have been tougher. I thought I handled it pretty well. I think my wife took it harder, and my family, my parents. Um, but you got to understand, Sean. I'm 53 years old, and I was 51 when it happened, and never in my life had I ever been in a hospital. I've never had a serious injury. I've been one of those people. I've stayed healthy. I've stayed active. I've been running for 38 years. I always thought, I was 20 years old. I'm not getting older. That's just how I think. I was always healthy. I would never think in my life that anything could happen to me. That's just how, that was my mindset my whole life.
Right.
And so it was a shock for me. But to tell you the truth, I mean, I'm not lying right now what I'm saying, but in the back of my mind, I was thinking about my next article. I'm serious. Basketball. That's my life, and I didn't brush it aside, but I thought I handled it pretty well. I mean, to tell you the truth, the doctors were like, you're kind of near the end phase, which isn't a good sign. But they were still like, well, we still believe you can make it through this. And that's basically that last phrase is all I needed,
You
which just
took that and ran with it.
got me going. And yeah, it was tough. It was tough, but it was tough 8 months. And basically, I had colon and liver. And for 5 months, I mean, I had a colostomy where there was an opening in my stomach. And basically, I couldn't use a toilet for 5 months. And everything came out there. And I had to change the bag like every 2 to 3 times a day. That was definitely an adjustment, but I thought I got pretty used to it after a while. But I couldn't do my running for 8 months, and that was hard on me because I love the outdoors and
You've been active your whole life.
active. I'm very active, and but I mean, I had a very good support system. My family was behind me, and basketball pretty much also was a big part in this. I don't want to say it saved my life, but I stayed active the whole time. I didn't take any time off. I was always working. I mean, obviously on days during my surgeries, I couldn't be in the arenas, obviously. But
Right.
like even during chemotherapy, when I had chemotherapy for 3 months, um, I would be calling games 2 days later, even though after you have chemotherapy, you're like totally exhausted, and you have to like I was always lying down for hours, like the day after. But that was always on Thursdays. But on Saturdays, I always had games, and I was calling those games. You know, it was it's just what I do. I had to do it.
You mentioned before, my guy, Daron Hillard.
Yeah,
Um, I talk to him still quite often, actually. And so you want to have tell about the story with him. Get it
basically
out there.
basically what happened was um, I was diagnosed in November of 2020, and that first time in the hospital I was like 10 days, and I can remember like halfway through it was 10:30 at night, and I wanted to interview him. He was playing with Cheska Moscow, and I
Right.
had contact with the press guy, and I was like, I want to interview him, and he was like, yeah, sure, we'll set it up. So like at 10:30 at night in a German hospital, I'm wandering through the corridors of this hospital, speaking English with Darun Hilliard, interviewing him, and you should have seen the German nurses. They're like looking at me. What is going on here? So that's just something that just the passion to be able to
Mhm.
interview NBA players. And even though I was in the hospital, I had just had my first surgery, and had been diagnosed with cancer, I was still interviewing people. The second time, then in April I would have my next two surgeries, or April and May, and then in April the second surgery, same thing. I was interviewing guys, and I was in another hospital in Mainz, Germany. There I interviewed Bonze Colson, ex NBA player. Also, just in the hospital, and people are like looking at me. And the third time, one more player I want to mention the third surgery was the most toughest because they really cut into me, and I had the that was one of the worst few days of my life. It was just the pain was just incredible. But anyway, I remember like even 3 days after the surgery, when I was kind of out of bed and moving around a little, it was during the playoffs, the BBL, and it was a Bamberg player, Italian national player, Michel Vitale, and I interviewed him over the phone, and that was one of the most difficult interviews in my life because I was in serious pain. But I just had to do this interview, you know, and it was just, I mean, it was difficult, but I got through it. And that's just basically, I just did not really take a day off, you know, in the hospital. I kept working. It caught my mind off everything, you know,
Yeah.
made me happy, you know, and that was the most important thing at that time.
Did the players know what you were going through right
Oh,
then? Like, did he know that?
no, no. I have to tell you, I just tried to live life as if everything was normal. I didn't want to tell my story, you know, to the people. I just didn't want to do it. You know, that's not how I am. I mean, I have to be honest. In April of 2021, in my second surgery, then I announced it official over Facebook, and then obviously it was a big outpour from all the people.
That's good.
They were all shocked. But other than that, people that I don't have on Facebook, I mean, Bonzi Colson, I didn't know, and Michel
Mhm.
Vitale didn't know. But after April, obviously, you know, a lot of people knew, but before that, from November to April, I did not. There were a few people,
Wow.
you know, in the basketball scene, you know, from the Skyliners that I had told,
Right.
and some other close friends or close associates in the basketball world. But other than that, I didn't. I kept it to myself.
Wow.
I didn't want to announce it quite yet.
Mhm. Um, Wait a second. I got a question from Seb Hunzi. Why did you have to for your sanity? Was it that kept you going? Why did you, I guess, why did you keep it
Yeah,
a secret?
kept me going. I'm not a guy that's just gonna sit in bed and just pout and worry about if I'm gonna die or stay alive and watch terrible German TV. I just had to do something, and basketball is what keeps me going. I just enjoy doing it. You know, I enjoy writing articles. I enjoy calling games. I enjoy interviewing players, and that's my life. That's my life.
I feel you. Um, let's talk about your book, The Real
Yeah,
Deal.
yeah.
So it was scheduled to come out actually before your diagnosis, right?
Yeah, we were hoping. I think it was like we were hoping it was actually during COVID. We wanted to get it out in 2020, but then COVID came,
Right,
and then we were then shooting for 2021. But then end of 2020, my cancer came,
right.
so it was held back a little. So, but we're hoping now for late winter, early spring 2023.
What is it about? Without giving out too much, of course you can't do that, but what is it basically about?
It's just about my career, you know. 20 years in German basketball, I've experienced a lot, and I think it's very good reading, and I think that it would entertain people. There just aren't many books out in Germany about German basketball, and basically it's a 7-year project that I began with my colleague Manuel Schust, who's also very involved in the German basketball scene, and he's kind of been like my mentor because he worked at a publishing company, and he's kind of been helping me with so many things with this book, and it's our project, and
Right.
I really have to thank him so much for helping me. And so yeah, I mean, it's more than 100 chapters, and it's some good stuff in there, Sean. Some really good
Okay,
stuff.
I look forward to it. And speaking of the book, speaking
Yes,
of books, so we've known each other a long time, and it's really a crazy thing when you wrote me the other day and you told me this, but um, long before long before I actually published this,
yeah. You
I had
sent
tried I
you
had
sent
tried
a
to
copy.
get it, huh?
You sent me a copy. I still have that book.
That's crazy because I had originally tried to get it published, but of course it's a niche book, so no publishers, no normal publishing houses would touch it. And back then, I used to just give it out to people just as a, like, a normal normal piece of paper size thing with a whole bunch of pages. And I would just give it to people just because I wanted the information out there, and I thought maybe the book would find its way into someone's hands and help them. That was my goal. So it got put on the back burner for a long time, and then of course 2020 hits. I have more time. My best friend who's watching right now says, "Hey, revisit the book. Why don't you self-publish it?" And that I hadn't even really thought about that. And that's
Right.
basically how my book came out. But it's crazy that you still have the copy that I gave you.
Of course. I mean, it looks like a college term paper. It's awesome. I mean, I actually found it. I had it in my basketball memorabilia, and I still have it. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, and you actually you personalized it. You wrote an autograph on it. I remember that.
That is so dope. And after we get off, you have to send me your address so I can send you the normal book, the hard the
Yeah. And I have to tell you,
paperback version.
I'm so sorry because I never knew about that because that was during COVID, and I wasn't really on Instagram at that time, and
Right.
you wrote me once, and then I saw that, and I was really sorry. Or actually, last year maybe. It
Yeah,
was,
it was like a long time I wrote you,
yeah.
and I was like, "Hey, can you pub up my book? It's coming out."
I'm
I
sorry.
heard crickets from Miles. Nothing. I was
Yeah,
like, "Damn,
I wasn't on Instagram. I'm sorry.
no problem, man." Okay, so now I've only got a couple of quick answer questions
Yeah.
for you. This is going to put you on the spot. I'm looking forward to your answer on this one. Kiss, kill, or marry? Boston Sports Edition. You've got the Patriots, you've got the Celtics,
Yeah.
and for you, especially for you, got the Boston Bruins.
Yeah.
Who do you kiss? Who do you kill? Who do you marry?
Wait, those so the
You
Bruins.
got the Bruins, you got the Celtics, and you got the Patriots.
All right, no Red Sox.
You got three choices. You can kiss
Okay,
one, you can kill one, or you can marry one.
marry one, kill one, and what's the other one?
Kiss.
Kiss. Um. All right. Kill Patriots, Bruins, and Celtics.
You wait. You kill the Patriots. Who do you
No, no,
kiss?
no. I'm just thinking about it.
Oh,
That's
okay.
really tough because they're my teams. Um. I can't marry the Patriots now because they won't have success again for a while. At least I don't think so. Um, maybe I'll kiss the Patriots.
Okay.
Um, all right, I got to marry the Celtics. I mean,
Got to marry the Celtics. That means you're killing the
I'm
Bruins.
the Bruins, but that actually fits because the Bruins. I'm just not a hockey guy anymore. I'm just
Okay.
a
I
basketball guy.
got you.
That's
I,
that's that works for me. That,
okay, I got you. I got you. So this is a weird one. If
okay.
aliens came and visited and said they need one interview from you to decide the fate of Earth,
Yes.
what interview do you give to the
So
aliens?
you mean I have to find a player who I would want to interview,
No,
or
no. One of your past interviews that you
oh
give to them to save the world. If they think it's good, they save the world. You save the world. If they think it's bad, we're all gone. What
wow
interview do you give?
wow. Um, I mean I've interviewed so many good players. Um, well, again, to be honest, because I'm a nice guy and I think we meshed back well, I would have to say our Eurobasket interview that I did with you.
Yes, yes, Miles, you are the
That
man. You have just saved Earth, Miles. Yes, thank you for that, Miles.
no problem, no problem. We should do another interview, just like what's happened to you, like just to catch
Miles,
up.
Miles, anytime. I'm here, man. I'm here.
I mean, you interview
Um,
me now. Why can't I interview you again? And to tell you the truth, I wouldn't have even known that. I just basically remember that post game interview we did after the Jena game in 2006. But I think now I do remember we did do an interview again
yeah,
after.
we did the interview after I was let go from Jena as coach.
Right. Now,
That's when we did the interview.
help me. Didn't you make a half court shot?
Miles, we don't need to talk about that. Yeah, actually was a three-quarter. It was from free throw to basket.
What?
But the only thing I remember about that is that we lost. It was a double overtime game against
Okay.
Bremerhaven.
I remember that as if it was yesterday for some reason.
Yeah, that.
Okay, so
Um, so I got two more for you. Oh no,
okay.
I asked that one already. Okay. This is the last one. This is I think a very telling one. What would you like to be remembered as a journalist?
Yeah, I mean, just the guy that, just passion and just working hard. I mean, that's basically it. And just always working and just trying to, do the best I can and just getting the journeys of the players out there. And we didn't really talk about this, but it isn't just the NBA or EuroLeague players. I mean, if you know my work, I mean,
You
I
interview everybody.
I focus guys that play JUCO. I mean, I
Yeah,
interview guys that do JUCO. I focus on guys that play in the German Regionalliga,
yeah.
guys that are just grinding and have a chip on their shoulder as big as Shaq. I don't know, and just some just as a guy that really just tried to you know let every player out there, tell their journey, not just the best players. Often I get dissed or I get criticized. This is another thing maybe for the criticized one. I've gotten criticism from people that say, "Hey, why the hell did you interview a guy from the Regionalliga? Why? Why not? Every player out there has their journey.
Yeah,
You have your journey.
yeah.
It's fascinating. It's different than from Derek Allen or Bryce Taylor. Or every player has a unique journey, and it deserves to be told. It doesn't matter if they're in the NBA or in the Regionalliga or in the Oberliga or whatever. So I mean, I want to be remembered as a guy that had no preference, a guy that interviewed everybody from top to bottom.
That's a dope answer and a great way to end our interview, my man. Thank you very much for coming on. I totally appreciate it. We will do a session for you now at some point. All you got to do is tell me. I'm there for you, man. So I
Anytime.
really appreciate you coming on and telling your story. And yeah, man, the best of luck for your health, the best of luck for your career. And I really appreciate you, Miles. I mean, we know each other a long time now, and I really appreciate you. I'm so thankful that you came on tonight.
And I thank you, Sean, for giving me the opportunity to tell my journey, even though I'm not a player. And it's been a pleasure and really great to hear your voice again after a very, very long time.
Yeah, man. So we evened it up just a little bit. 1,700 interviews, six for you now.
Okay, great. Maybe I'll get some more interviews down the line. I would love to do it, but this was really great. I had a lot of fun, and I'm definitely going to check out your interviews on the Eurostep.
All right, man. I appreciate it, man. You can get out of here. I'm gonna say goodbye to the teammates out there.
Thank you so much, Sean. Take care and talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Thanks, man. So, teammates, once again, a great interview. I I love this. I love doing your stuff because I get a lot of different guests that make it a joy to interview, and this was another one of those for me. And me and Miles go way back, and it's always nice to have somebody on it that you actually know. Sometimes I interview people that I've never met before, and but having someone on that I genuinely respect and know for a long time is also really special as well. So that's it for me for tonight. I hope everybody's well. If you watched for 30 seconds or for the whole 58 minutes now, I appreciate everything that all of you are doing. And I hope everybody is safe wherever you are in the world. And that's it for me. Old head out.